All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about the basics of budgeting. All right, so let's go and get started. All right, so a lot of times people, if you were to ask them what are one of the things that are that's causing them stress in life is going to be money, especially you have it in quotations there. I work, why don't I have any money? And a lot of that has to do with the fact that their budget, the amount of money that comes in every month, and the amount of money that comes out every month doesn't seem to it doesn't seem to work. All right, according to CNN, Americans are on a whole are just aren't great savers here to the point where almost 70% of us don't even have $1,000 in the bank. Furthermore, almost half the Americans claim to cover a $400 emergency. They'd have to borrow the money or sell something quick if they, or I'm sorry, to cover a $400 emergency, they would have to sell something or borrow the money to cover it. All right. Now, of course, you can find that on that link right there. All right, so before we dive into a budget, let's talk about a couple of terms just to make sure we're on the same page here. All right, so a cash flow. All right, overall simple concept. A cash flow is nothing more than money coming in and out of, let's just say, an account. All right, so that's kind of like the more generic. That's kind of like the more generic answer or a definition to this, but you could also say money coming out of a checking account since we're talking about kind of personal finance here. Now, fixed expenses are expenses that um, do not increase or decrease. All right, so they do not increase or decrease. Now, typically, because of the fact that we're talking about a budget, we tend to look at a fixed expense in the more of a monthly concept as opposed to like yearly or something. And of course, variable is the exact opposite, and that is, um, so we're talking about expenses that increase and decrease. All right. Now, as we're going through the video, I'm going to give a couple examples to really kind of hammer this thing down, but it's an easy concept. All right. Next here, this is just kind of like a monthly budget guideline. This is just kind of a practical, simple way to budget. So Joe has 200 or $2,000 coming in monthly. All right. Now the overall concept behind a budget is actually pretty simple. It's the actual execution of the budget where it gets a little more challenging. But the actual doing it is pretty simple. All right. So for example, if Joe made $2,000 monthly, according to his kind of budget guideline here, he decided, okay, I'm going to save 10% of it, which would be about $200 here. Um, 25% would go to his rent and mortgage, which I believe is 500. All right, and so basically all I'm doing is I'm just multiplying his percentage by the percentage here. Personal items about 200 bucks a month. Food, grocery, I think is $300 a month. Utility cost will be about 115. Transportation costs, that's like his car, gas, anything of that nature. Car related would be about 300. And then miscellaneous would be, let's see, that's 20%, so that'd be 400. So his actual budget before the month would look similar to that. Now his actual would be different because obviously he's going to have to fill it in as he's filling some stuff out. Now the thing is, let's go to like rent and mortgage. This is what is called a fixed income or a fixed expense because it's always going to stay 500. His rent and mortgage. So that is something from month to month to month doesn't really change. All right, like savings, let's say, or like personal items. Let's say he budgeted $200, but let's just say he only spent 170 bucks. So he's under budget here. But let's say food and grocery, let's say he ended up spending $350. So he's obviously over budget. Okay. So you'd go down through all of this right here. Now, hopefully, after it's all said and done, the savings here, you would actually have $200 savings. You want to make sure that after all the bills get paid, you do actually have something to save. All right, but that's just kind of a basic budget breakdown. Here's another example that I kind of broke down, or not broke down, but I copied from the internet here. Pretty simple. Again, with a budget, there's really two main components. First off, how much money are you making? So that would be kind of like your cash flow in. And then we have our cash flow out. Okay. So again, rent, mortgage, things of that nature, living expenses, and then regular payments. So, and again, after it's all said and done, you hope that the amount of money that comes in is more than the amount of money goes out because that means you're actually saving. All right. So just a couple of quick examples here. We have Dave and Joan. All right. So again, the overall concept of a budget is relatively simple. It's actually living a budget. That's where it gets really challenging. But for what we're doing, it's going to be relatively simple. Using transportation percentages, how much is budgeted for transportation? Let's see. According to this question, 15,000 or 15%. So it says they are making together 5,000 and 15% of that is going towards transportation. So 5,000 times 15% gives you $750. So that is their transportation budget. Is going to be 750 bucks. But let's see how much they did spend. All right, so let's see. Paid $500 for car payments. Okay. An additional $150 for car insurance, $160 for gas, and then additional $40 for an oil change. So when I add all that up, I end up with $850. Now, did Dave and Joan stay within their transportation budget? Well, the transportation budget was 750, and they ended up spending 850. So that is a big fat no. They did not stay within their budget. They're over budget, $100. Now, in your opinion, what advice would you give Dave and Joan to reduce their transportation costs? Again, answers will vary on this, but you might give them some advice of, sell car, buy an inexpensive car, all right? Or you might say something like, hey, let's combine trips or carpool to decrease gas prices or gas costs. All right, so again, there's not necessarily a right or wrong here. It's just kind of like you're over budget. So how can you stay within your budget? Well, you got to make some decisions here. Yeah. Sometimes selling a car is the decision. All right, so let's say Jill just graduated high school and wants to live in an apartment in the city. She makes $18,000 annually, which is her net pay. And she listened to a financial advisor on the radio suggesting that housing should be no more than 25% of her income. Based on this, how much can she afford to rent? Now, a lot of students kind of get screwed up on this because the question starts off with telling you how much money she makes annually, and the question is asking for monthly. So you have to do a quick conversion here. All right. So if I made, or if Jill made 18,000 a year, I would divide that by 12 to get her annual, which I believe is 1,500. Let me check. Yes. So she's making 1,500 monthly. All right. Now she is going to devote 25% of that, which would be 0.25, to her housing expenses, which when you do that, you get a grand total of $375. So $375 would be 25% of her paycheck that should go to her housing, expenses. All right. So for the month of April, Tony went to the gas station 4 times. His car insurance. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, his net pay is this. His monthly net pay. What percentage of his monthly income? All right. So for this question here, we got to find the percentage here. Now, when you find the percentage, finding the percentage is basically, okay, what do I want divided by the total? Now, want in this example is pretty much the transportation costs, and we will divide that by how much money he makes in all. So let's see. So let's go ahead and add up all the transportation costs, which is 35, 32, 36, 30, and then 110 per month. All right, so we get 243, and we're going to divide that by how much he makes per month. So when I do this, I get a grand total of roughly, let's go ahead and round to the nearest percentage, 7%. So roughly 7%. All right, let's keep going. Okay, George's monthly income is $4,583. He is living on a budget. Last month, his expenditures were broken down to the following. answer the following questions. All right, so the chart would not be great. Okay, I think that was maybe a copy paste from a test here. All right, so here's what we're going to do here, and that is George makes $4,583. We're going to figure out exactly how much money based on his income will go to all of these things here. So very simply, mathematically, we're just going to take 4583 and multiply it by all of the percentages in the problem. All right, so food, he devotes 27% to go to food. So we're going to multiply 4583 by 27%, and we get 1,237 in food. Rent, 1,146. Utilities, 458. Insurance for 458. Transportation costs, $550. And then lastly, any type of miscellaneous throughout the month. So when I add all this up, all right, so when I add all of this up, I just circled here, what is his totally monthly expenses? Well, after all that goes out, he would have spent $4,078. Now, how much will he be able to put in the savings? Well, let's see. He made 4583. So he made 4583 a month, and 4,078 is going out to expenses, just living expenses. So he's going to be able to have $505 left over to put in the savings. All right, and the last question here, this is July, August, and September's bills for Kelly and Steve Miller. All right, so if you just read it here, this Kelly and Steve Miller's expenses for the month of July, August, and September. All right, now a couple things before I switch, and I think I'm going to go ahead and answer a couple. Well, let me go ahead and get to the questions. All right, so what are some examples of variable living expenses? Well, before we do that, let's go ahead and answer what are some fixed living expenses. All right, so I told you we were going to get into it in this video, and here, excuse me, here's what we're going to do. And here's what we're going to do. All right, so first off, I want you to pay attention. Mortgage payment. Notice how it's $675 every single month. This would be considered a fixed expense because this bill is not changing. So let's see, what else is not changing? Let's see. Oh, look at that car payment. Look at car payment. Look at car insurance. Notice how all of these bills are staying the same month to month. So these will be considered fixed expenses. But look at, let's just say the grocery bill. For the month of July, $300. For the month of August, $400. For the month of September, 325. See how this goes, increases and decreases each month. So this would be called a variable expense because it does not stay the same. All right, let's see what else. Oh, look at the electric bill. $72 here, electric bill $85 here, electric bill $100 there. All right. Now, I didn't see this, but you can also see Beth's allowance doesn't change here. So you could technically say this is a fixed expense because it doesn't change. All right, the telephone bill, another example. Look at that. Stays the same, stays the same, stays the same. But, and I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but look at gas. 150, 125, 135. Again, these are examples of things that increase and decrease. All right, so we can go ahead and answer the first two questions. What are some of the variable living expenses? Well, the grocery bill, for example. The grocery bill, the electric bill, all right, things of that nature. All right, what are some of the fixed living expenses? All right, so some of the bills that don't change is the mortgage bill, the car payment. All right, the mortgage, the car payment, car insurance, the allowance. Again, you can go back and you can kind of see how those don't change. Calculate their average monthly expenditures for 3 months. Oh, that's actually pretty easy, finding the average. All right, so for the month of, let's see, July, August, September. So for the month of July, they spent $3,309. For the month of August, 3,790, and then this was September. All right, so to find the average, all I would do is just add them all up. So let's see, we're at 3309 plus 37.92 plus 28.32. I'm going to get a total amount of money, and then I'm going to simply divide it by 3 months, and my answer ends up being 3,311. There you go. All right, so that's the video on budgeting. Again, in conclusion, it's a relatively simple concept, uh, but really where the difficulty comes in is actually living on a budget, because a lot of people do not seem to have a lot of success living on a budget. But anyway, we'll talk more in class. Have a good day.